morning, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm really pleased to be joined here with Alistair Lomax. Alistair is director of at ARC Universities Group. I'll introduce Alistair properly in just a couple of minutes. I'm Nadia Alomar. I'm director of marketing and extensions at Clore Social, and this is Leaders Now. So welcome. First, just a little bit about Leaders Now. It's a series of breakfast events inspired to facilitate inspiring conversations and foster networking and collaboration as much as we can in this virtual setting between leaders of the social sector. So it's really, we want to provide a space and give an opportunity for people to come together, exchange, engage in these conversations, ask as many questions as you want on key topical issues. So social media, please do feel free to post on social media. Please do tag Clore Social and Alistair Lomax. So we've got one of our colleagues in the chat will be putting up some of these links. Do please use the hashtag LeadersNow. And like I said, questions, any kind of questions that you have that come up in between, kind of while we're speaking, please do feel free to ask away. You can pop them in the chat. You can use the Q&A function, and we'll come to them either during the conversation if they're quite kind of relevant to what we're saying, or I'll come to it a little bit further down. So maybe at around 9:30 when the Q&A starts properly. So do feel free to engage. We would love to hear from you. So a little bit about Alistair. Alistair, thank you so much for joining us. We're really pleased. It's such an important thing to be talking about, especially given what's happened. The importance of collaboration and leadership is just, this year has been absolutely immense. As I said, Alistair is director at ARC Universities Group, and for 6 years prior to joining the ARC Universities Group as founding director, Alistair led the advancement team at the University of Buckingham. So together with Vice-Chancellor Sir Anthony Sheldon, he established the first major drive for the university, raising over £30 million. Alistair has had a varied career as a facilitator, charity chief executive and higher education fundraiser, working with the likes of Oxfam, Save the Children, Refugee Resource, there's a lot on the list there, UCL, Imperial College, University Cork, and Alistair is a trustee of the Aurora Orchestra. So, Alistair, thank you so much. Would you mind bringing to life a little bit your role, your work, and what it is that you do?
Sure. Well, thank you very much. Actually, just taking me back to Buckingham. I mean, a few years ago, actually about 6 years ago, being in Buckingham, it just seemed like this sleepy little town in the middle between Oxford and Cambridge, almost midway, and it just seemed that there was nothing happening at all. And then the Infrastructure Commission report came out in 2017 saying, let's link these two great cities together. And I started looking at what the universities were, so the ARC Universities Group is a partnership, a coalition of the 9 universities between Oxford and Cambridge, and it exists to contribute to the regional economic generation agenda, and do its part in the way that universities, they do 3 things basically, which are innovation, spin out, and startups and knowledge transfer. They do teaching and skills development, which is very important in a changing world, and they do research. So the emphasis on R&D, and especially in the R&D intensive area with some of these universities. So they're very, very different, and the idea was to draw together and draw upon that diversity. So within, say, Oxford and both Cambridge, you've got major, world-class research-led institutions and world-class teaching-led institutions with that massive reach and potential to do much more. So our members, it's really a loose coalition, but a coalition of the willing. the vision is of just doing as much as we can to release as much of the pent up the capability that there is for the economy to do some transformative work. So, and I think we'll speak a bit more about the major projects. But it's like the arc itself is like our Silicon Valley, unrecognized, unknown, and not particularly visible. So, and the universities seems they're like beacons lit upon the way. Together, the turnover is 5 billion, the impact on the economy, 13 billion a year. They're massive and bright institutions and very exciting places full of brilliant people.
It's inspiring just to hear that. It would be really nice to hear also about maybe some kind of specific objectives, maybe some key projects and how collaboration aims to meet the objectives.
Okay, well, recently, I mean, the whole ARC project has taken a while forming, and actually in anticipation of the now yet again delayed comprehensive spending review, that was a kind of stimulus to get our story together. So the universities are leading on some key areas, and I think there are 4 that came through that. One of them is a cross-cutter. Life sciences. So we have all been following very closely the impact of COVID and the breakthrough work that's being done in diagnostics, in distribution, in manufacturing, and in discovery. And thinking about the extraordinary power that there is within this region in life sciences. So one of them is to bring together the capabilities in Oxford and Cambridge and develop a super cluster in life sciences. It's already pretty good, but actually to do something for the world, which is really exciting and develops that capability. The space gateway. And these interrelate because in space and the space industry, which is very busy in the UK and in this region in particular, with Harwell and with Westcott developing low-level satellite capability. Now, why on earth should the universities be leading that? And it's because of the impact on AI, robotics, machine learning, quantum. So again, life sciences, if we're doing remote diagnostics and distribution of vials or whatever it is in the future, we will be relying on that kind of capability as well as the environment. And the third one, sustainable aviation. So and in response to the government target of zero carbon aviation by 2050, we actually have within the ARC both an airport. Luton Airport which has a very interesting ownership because it's largely owned by the council, and then the capability across Cranfield, Oxford, Cambridge, Buckinghamshire New University, Anglia Ruskin, TWI, the ATI, so government agencies coming in, and a lot of industry investment. In Cranfield, there is a global research airport. So, and I make no apology because I'm also an amateur pilot, so I love that part of it. Then the digital lab, which is looking at how digital twins are developed and how things are tracked and monitored, and complex modeling. So looking at things and building a safe environment and a model to see what will happen. And the big theme is the green arc, the environment. So drawing everything together in service of the environment, protecting and improving that in terms of habitat, solutions, tracking, and interventions, and that's anything from the really hard science to the policy. So it's a very exciting broad range, and also the universities are there coming together. I mean, the access to the world leading capability is really there, and bringing people together to solve the big problems. So that's where I am, and just it's really a network of capability.
Well, yeah, I mean, they are big problems, aren't they? They're all up there. And you've not only got a huge amount of players, but incredibly powerful players in that network as well. One thing that clearly springs to mind for someone like me who's in marketing and comms is the importance of communication in all of these projects among all of these people and institutions. So could you talk a little bit about communication, please, and how that plays out?
Sure. Well, I think we're trying to keep it as discursive and interactive as possible, rather than just telling people what's going on. But by bringing people in and doing, I think the online world has been really, really important. You know, the kind of leap forward that we've gone through over recent months. And we're doing a series of webinars on particular themes, and we'll do many more. But the communications piece, I mean, it's I think I have a particular thing about, you know, the making things tangible. So right at the beginning, and I've got an example here, when it was just an idea, we actually met civil servants with the Director General from the MHCLG, which was leading the project, although it's a coalition of government departments. The Vice Chancellors met. I was working with Anthony Selden, who chaired a meeting in Whitehall, and we agreed to come up right at the beginning with a communique that we would do it, with three things, with a steering group and to draw together a brochure. So the communique, we produced this document, which is a cobbled together 20-pager, but the most important thing is that. So the signatures of all the 10 vice chancellors from these great universities, including Oxford and Cambridge, to say, look, we're working together, we believe in collaboration, we will do something to serve the public benefit. And you know, people couldn't believe that. Well, you've got all 10. There were 10 at the time. One has since pulled out, but so my note to self is not to next time to have the strapline with a number of universities in it, because we used to say 10 universities, one future, and now we say ARC universities, your future. I think the way that bringing together coalitions of figures and figureheads for their particular institutions and their constituent parts is absolutely key, and gives confidence and buys time. It buys a ticket, and it gives legitimacy to carrying those ideas forward. And then there's a lonely period when you're carrying the spear, and you know, you wonder whether you're making it up, before it starts taking on a life of its own, and people and ideas come forward, and you discover that people have been thinking about it and doing stuff with it, and it becomes real.
Thank you. Yeah, I think so. We've just had a question from the audience, and I think that leads us nicely actually to the next part that we want to present. But they asked, they're curious to know more about collaboration of the willing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, actually, people call it collaboration of the willing, but there is within that there's taking the unwilling along, and I think that I would say that one of the key things is listening to the voice of the skeptic when you have such a large coalition. I mean, and this isn't just universities. So we've got 4 local enterprise partnerships, or one of them is a combined authority, and and about 32 local authorities. So actually holding them together. There's not an entity. This is based on values, and so it is literally a coalition of the willing. That is the only kind of technical description we've got for this group. I don't think that gets us into major activity. And there's a lot of discussion at the moment about creating an entity around that. But I think testing that and negotiating for support is a key part of the formative stage of any idea. So that's an instinct. It's a kind of the etiquette, I think, needs to be designed around that. So there's a kind of listening function to to the beginning of something, and that's what we've got. You know, it will change pretty soon. And if there's not a material commitment that is attracted by those things, you know, because we're preening, so we are the peacock with the feathers out, and you know, it's really fantastic, and we sometimes can't understand why the other peacocks aren't responding with great enthusiasm, but you know, the juices are flowing. Let's see what happens next.
Brilliant, thank you. I think it's a good time to introduce a video which kind of brings to life some of the things that you've been talking about now.
Okay.
So if I can ask Julia to do that, and then we can talk a little bit more after the video.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
This is a really exciting time.
You know, we really are on the cusp of a technology revolution.
The changes we're looking at now are complete changes in configuration.
To retain society's trust, we have to aim at net zero.
We have some of the best businesses in the UK.
Aviation is a key sector in the UK's economy, and particularly focused around this area.
If you look at the region, you look at Oxford, Cambridge, Cranfield, there's some fantastic capability, some fantastic opportunities. We're seeing the challenges of Brexit, we're seeing the challenges of COVID, we're seeing the challenges of sustainability.
Where we're going next is we've got to make the UK targets of zero emissions by 2050.
If we can bring together research opportunities and the minds of the entrepreneurs in this area.
New technologies, new materials, autonomy, new energy sources, electric aircraft, hydrogen fuel cells, sustainable aviation fuel.
If we're going to rapidly decarbonise flight and power generation, we're going to have to dramatically change both the culture and the tools we use.
There's really nowhere else in the world that this innovation and research can happen.
For the last 50 years, we've been a major industrial partner with Rolls-Royce, Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, Siemens, and more recently Dyson.
500 million would see the UK being at the very heart of a future global aviation sector.
A lot of work is already underway, and that with a bit more investment from the government, from the private sector, we really can start to tackle that challenge of net zero flight.
The opportunity for the UK to remain at the very heart of the aviation industry is there now.
Create investment, create wealth, create jobs.
You can use this art as the gateway into the academic research, the research universities from across the UK.
To grow and flourish, and will enable that prosperity to be spread across the whole of the UK.
The great thing is that the industry is starting to accept that we need to solve these problems, and we can do it.
And unlock the economic potential, unlock the solutions to meet the sustainability goals. It's there.
Thanks, Julia. That gets you pumped up for the day of work, doesn't it? So it's just so inspiring, and again, just shows the importance of everything that goes behind, you know, kind of behind all this collaboration and this great work. It's fantastic. I think it would be really lovely to learn a little bit more about you and how you kind of fostered all of this and you know, brought this together. But if we could start maybe first, if that's okay, with your own kind of personal leadership journey and what motivated you towards the causes that you're leading, these wonderful projects that you're working on and leading.
Well, I really don't know. I was thinking about this, and when you asked that question last week, Nadia, and the answer is I don't know. I really don't. I mean, because I'm not somebody. It's not one thing I'm passionate about, and I kind of thought that and the sort of things that I've done have all sort of been about bringing people or ideas together. And I remembered, and again, I said, well, why does, you know, so what? Why is that important to me? And I come from a big family, you know, there are lots of ideas and people and campaigns. And my dad was a journalist who travelled the world and came back, and it was like United Nations at home, and it was always about changing the world. And I used to have a recurrent dream about being together in the family on an ice floe, and the ice floe would divide, and we'd all have to jump across the floe and join up again. And I don't know whether that's something to do with it, but then I boiled it down to, because I knew you needed an answer to the question, to 4 things, and they've probably all got different roots. But I like to do good things. I'm not interested in making loads of money, or, you know, so I like to do things that improve the world. I like to, and these were in hierarchical order, by the way. I like to learn new stuff. So actually, I'm always completely outside of my comfort zone at the moment with each of these projects. You know, you can learn a bit and have a notion about something, and then I know nothing compared with Rob Miller from Cambridge. You know, I mean, so I'm loving all the learning that I'm doing at the moment. And then I like to be associated or affiliated with something that is real. And actually, quite often in the past, I've created my own thing in order to have a habitat. You know, I've created a habitat that is good and that ice floe can stay together. And finally, it's just subsistence, remuneration. You know, and actually, if you take that one out, then the satisfaction levels on all the others. And in the volunteering that I've done, I was a Samaritan for 4 years, and you know, that was the most rewarding thing, and I was entirely doing those 3 things without the 4th. So if you take that one away, then the others just rise up like the kind of, you know, the dials on a kind of recording studio deck. But those are a few things, and I'm also restless. So once I've got into a zone where I'm too comfortable, I just somehow cast myself out again. So this isn't forever, but, you know, those things are pumping away.
Yeah, brilliant. No, thank you. You mentioned family there as one of the kind of an influential factor. Mm-hmm. Are there other influences, you would say, some other external influences that have really shaped your work and shaped your leadership, and who made you really the person and the leader you are today? Yeah,
well, I think I'm a magpie for the good things, and I've in my work, especially with Anthony, who's an amazing leader, picking up and learning from the best attributes of that individual. So Anthony Selden was someone who had initiative-itis. You know, he had ideas shooting out. It was like being in a firework display, and someone who was enormously exciting and imaginative. And you know, just learning from what he would put behind an idea to set it off. You know, actually then having the resources to carry through was another issue, but very exciting. So that kind of being open-minded and giving people encouragement and following the idea. Peter Gregson is the current chair, and somebody who has great vision, as well as statesmanship and ability to take others with him. So he's the credible glue in the middle, and as the Vice Chancellor to Cranfield University, somebody who has credibility across industry, government, Oxford and Cambridge. And there are very few people who can hold all those different audiences, and just learning from him, and the experience of working with Peter is very smooth. There's a lot of work goes on. Someone I came across, Susanna Clatton, great philanthropist, who is the owner of BMW. So she did pretty well at birth by inheriting it. But what she's done with that, and she's someone who was a supporter at Buckingham, and would describe herself as the enabler, but the enabler is only able to work with the visionary and with the people who will do the doing, is how she put it. I've been really influenced by people on telly, Ricardo Semler, wrote the book Maverick, about inheriting a family firm and doing something with it and changing it. So the family is quite important to me. Clive Gillinson, who ran the London Symphony Orchestra, and that orchestral, world is very important to me too. Because my initial training, all I ever wanted to do was be a professional musician, and I did that for a while, and I was rubbish because I was too interested in other things. But anyway, that's he was another one. So taking bits and pieces from these other examples.
Thank you. Yeah, no, that actually really brings us nicely to another question that we've had from the audience. So thank you, Nicola Kidston. And she's interested to hear more about what makes collaboration happen and the leadership needed behind it. So you've mentioned with those key people in your life who you've come across. If we focus specifically on collaboration.
Okay, well that's a good question. Thank you, Nicola. I think the recent experience of the recent year, you need several things. You need a large group of people who are bought in, and you need a very, very close team of people who can work daily to crack it, and they're the inner circle. And I think without both of those things, it just doesn't work. So I think there's a kind of and that those are the key components we've had recently with this. So there are different. I think there are different. It's like if you read the instructions on cooking really fantastic chocolate, and it says, for a minute, go to this temperature and then go to that temperature and then temper it and then cool it and then heat it up again. And I think the key to collaboration is that there are different phases and you have to be attuned to what temperature it needs to be. So there are sometimes when you move into the space where you're leading and making it safe for others, but then you have to wait for people to catch up. And there are other times when other people are ahead and you have to respond to that challenge. So I don't think there's one single thing, but it's certainly that there are groups of people and there are points of negotiation. So there's a kind of cycle that goes on. I haven't analysed it. I've only just thought about it, and thanks for the question.
Thank you. And how about some of the I suppose the softer leadership skills, the soft leadership skills, would you say would be key in that process? Because that feels like a lot about, communication has come up obviously time and time again, but communication and a little bit of instinct as well, and kind of self-awareness and self-management, and all of those things seem to be very kind of key to making sure these things happen and you're able to listen and notice what other people are doing and flex with them.
Yeah, well, I think there's actually, and it's not necessarily positive emotions, but I think it's important to be in touch with both your own emotions and the emotions of the group, and a lot of those emotions will be about fear, pride. They'll be about negative things. They'll be, I'm going to look stupid if I go further. So making it safe to move forward and turn up the temperature.
And I love that analogy, by the way. I think I'm going to be using that as well. I do love an analogy. And I think another one from the audience that really, from Christian, that really was quite pertinent. In terms of collaboration working in the charity sector right now, post-pandemic, finances are stretched to the maximum. How do you bring together a collaboration of the willing when often most of our most likely partners are seen as rivals and competitors?
Very interesting. When I did an MBA, and when I didn't feel good enough to do what I was actually doing, years and years ago, and I just couldn't understand the forces of competition, because that meant more for me, less for you. I negotiate and I make my own, I'm going to fatten myself, and I can only do that by diminishing you. And that working in supply chains, and that seemed to breed, so that literal competition was around scarcity. And I think we're living through a very, very interesting time. And it's almost like, I mean, I've been reading recently about Roy Hattersley's book about, you know, post-war and NHS and the Attlee government, and how something that, and I think it's quite an interesting analogy, because you've got in the war, we had a Conservative government with a campaign and a task, which was to win the war. Once we'd won the war, the relationships that were there allowed us to move into an era where we had a benevolent state, and we had, you know, the NHS was born, etc., etc., etc. So these things, I think the collaboration that there is running deep, and we may not be completely aware of it. The second thing is that I think we're in a period of enormous creativity through being threatened together, and that's and the challenges of Brexit coming along underneath actually reinforce that in a way, because our industries, I mean, if we look at the aviation industry, we're third in the world. It's worth 35 billion. There are 6,000 redundancies going on right now in the southwest of England, massive industrial base that's been built up over 60 years. What happens next? So if you can work collaboratively and invent something which gives us a legacy of success, we're actually in the process of evolution. It's very difficult to see those things now when we're close up, when it's painful, when there's no money. But I think if we keep the vision in mind, we will get there, and we need to be open-minded to what's coming through.
Thank you. And what I think that leads us on nicely as well to talk about some of the things that you're most proud of, some of your greatest achievements in your career, I suppose. Collaboration.
Yeah, well, I'm not actually very good at this. Because I've got quite a loud voice saying "you're shit, get off" in my head. So actually, and I was thinking, because when you asked this question last week, I thought, well, what, you know, I'm not very good at standing back and saying that was really good, because I'm so restless that I'm always trying to make it better. So and I think I've learned to kind of pop the champagne cork a bit and do things with the team, and that's, you know, hard when you're socially isolated. But I did work years ago that won lots and lots of awards, and we just went out for lots of dinners and got fat. And but I was thinking about, you know, there's the film The Aviator with I mean, it's another film buff, for the plane spotters, the anoraks, and Leonardo DiCaprio is going to a celebration and playing Howard Hughes, and Howard Hughes they've just celebrated the maiden flight of this amazing breakthrough aircraft, and so he drinks the champagne and walks away and saying, yeah, but the torque's wrong, the engine propeller rate is wrong, we should have had the cowling, the center of gravity's in the wrong place. And I'm like that, I'm afraid. So I'm always thinking about what can be done better, or differently, or what I can learn from it. So I wouldn't say I'm proud of where I've got to with this, but I also am mindful that it's just the beginning, and the moment of pride will come when there's the first whatever, and it's actually there, or in 20 years' time, it'll be a moment of pride that there's a different way of doing things, and I had a tiny, tiny part in it.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. You're not going to give an answer, are you? To a specific no, and that's fine. You know, we all have our different motivations and stuff, but I suppose each step will enable you to reach that point that you're talking about. And I'm intrigued to hear more about the different awards and what that was for.
Okay, well,
the icing, aren't they? It's about how you feel inside, and I do understand that.
Yeah, well, those were good. I mean, so that was another organisation that I set up called UniAid, and which was helping students cope with financial hurdles to higher education. Very dry topic, and we tackled that by bringing together innovators and designing some interactive games, which were, I mean, my 9-year-old at the moment is is playing this interactive game, which we designed 20 years ago, the same guts to it, but doing it online. That's Among Us. We did that using students' scenarios, looking at the financial impacts of risk taking, but embedding it in a game scenario, which was an absolute smash hit, used by millions of people all over the world, and picked up by government and used in the classroom to deliver core modules for GCSE maths. You know, so that was doing things in, you know, applying these techniques, but mainly doing it because I really didn't know what I was doing. So I had to ask for help from lots and lots of people who did, and they were from different worlds, and bringing them together around a problem. Yeah, the ice flowed.
Wonderful. Well, that is something to be proud of. Even just
You've got an answer. There we are.
I got an answer. Yeah, I'm very pleased, and you should be too. After what you've just said, bringing all those people together in itself is an achievement, and like I said, it all leads. You know, it leads to. It does lead to greatness. And what about your one of your greatest challenges? What do you find very, very challenging in this whole?
I think just keeping going. I think you think you've almost got there, and then there's a setback. And it's picking yourself and everyone else up and moving forward. So, for example, you know, we went all out and did something really fantastic with the economic prospectus for the ARC, which is a download from our website, and it's a really, really lovely piece of work, which involved input from a close team, editing input from about 100 different people, and was really proud of that. And then there's nothing that happens because it's all deferred or delayed for a year. But building on that and having the time, picking it up and saying, okay, now what can we do for the next opportunity? How can we make it better and continue? How can we, you know, the momentum that needs to be kept up until there is actually a point of performance. And actually my instinct, this comes way, you know, through my training as a professional musician, as an oboist. I mean, that's, you practice for hours and hours and hours a day, and actually nothing is beyond you, because you know that if you've got enough time until the performance, you can crack it. But it's persuading people who may not have that instinct that it's okay, and you've all got to carry on practicing when you're knackered and you just want to give up.
No, that is tough. And also, I suppose, looking after yourself as well, making sure that your reserves are topped up and you have the energy and the motivation to carry on. Whether you're good at looking after yourself.
Well, I think I've become better at looking after myself. I've looked after a lot of other people and always put them first. But recently, and lockdown has been good for this, I started cycling from Oxford to Stroud. And I did that on a crappy old bike, you know, with one gear and no brakes. And now I've got, you know, I've bought a racing bike and I'm doing it properly, and I'm really, really enjoying it. And just taking time out and actually having time to think and physical exercise. And we've got a dog. So Joe, who's arrived, who's a collie and needs lots of walking, and walking is great, you know, by the water, and just thinking and having time to work stuff out. And actually, I think the lockdown way of working is really, I've found it really, really enriching, because there's a lot of thinking to be done.
Yeah, brilliant, thank you. And you've mentioned the importance of leading from behind as well. Go back to that. So what does that entail, and do you have some kind of specific examples?
Well, I think it's kind of thinking about the temperature again, because if everything is working, I mean, I think everyone has a kind of personal style. So my style is to lead by example, and then to back off, and then there's a moment to come back in. So leading from behind, it's most successful if let's imagine that all these people, you know, if there are 100 people involved and it's the size of a symphony orchestra, all you have to do, because everyone knows their part and they play it much better than you could ever do, is do the downbeat. So if you bring people in, and then for the next movement, or for the next movement, or for the coda, and if you're bringing someone in, if you're playing with a soloist and you want to start them off on the cadenza and then bring the orchestra back in at that moment. So leading from behind is something that a concept I started thinking about when working with Ian Cray, who's been another amazing influence. And Ian was the director of operations at King's College, and he's helped us with our strategy. And Ian's someone who's, you know, he's a straight talking Aussie, but he's been here a long time, so he understands, you know, things like the class structure, which is all over universities. Leading from behind is not underplaying your part, but not overplaying your part. And so knowing what it is that you need to do. So a successful board meeting is one where we've worked really hard with the chair. The papers are really amazing. There are lots of inputs, and actually, I don't need to say much at all. I just need to do the downbeat. And actually, all I'm doing is I'm actually conducting the offstage choir because the chair is doing the downbeat.
That's a wonderful answer. Thank you. And it blew me away a bit. I'm trying to think about that in its context. It's wonderful. We've got another one from Nicola actually. What is the mistake that you have learned most from?
Yeah, I saw that come up. Thanks, Nicola. I don't know. I mean, I think there are things I regret. I regret not spending more time with my dad, actually, especially in his latter years. But I'm also that doesn't work as a kind of single thing. I mean, once it's kind of Freudian slip. I thought I'd fallen out with the trustee, and you know, and I was writing an email to my chair to say how, you know, this that I was really concerned, and it was one of those emails that you write and you just have no filter on it, you know, and then press send, and I sent it to her. And so the shock of doing that, because having ignored me for years, the phone rang and it was her. And I just stood up, you know, answering the phone. And actually it was really good because we needed to have a row, and doing it through other people wasn't right. So that was so was it a mistake? I mean, I learned from it not to be so cavalier with email. I think there are mistakes I've made, but I think I've learned. The bigger the mistake, the more the learning and the more benefit you get from it. But that takes time, and it also, to earn that, takes a bit of skill. I did the wrong A-levels. I should have left school and gone to college, you know, things like that. I should have stayed in Poland, and when I worked in Poland for a year after university, between the University and Music College, that I should have been more careful in, you know, with a particular relationship, that, you know, those sorts of things. But I can't think of, you know, a kind of, maybe it's just a catalogue of errors.
Well, we all have them, don't we? But it's interesting that you mentioned that with the trustee. It's funny because sometimes I suppose people are really not wanting to get into negative conversations or challenging conversations. You think it'll make it worse, but as long as you have, I suppose, common ground, and you want the same thing, sometimes you do need to get things out in the open, and it does mean going to that space, which I don't call negative. I think you've got to air some things, and they have to come out before you move then into a space where you can, you know, kind of move together and achieve what you need to achieve together.
That's really interesting. I mean, I think the one of the things, the main rules or the guidance for Samaritans is to steer into distress. And I think we're so used to running away from distress and smoothing things over that there's not a learning opportunity from that. Or you know, when you need somebody to say, you know, what is it about you? Why, if you understand why people are behaving a certain way, or you know, I think that's okay.
Absolutely. We've got another one from Alexandra, so thank you so much. Long-term thinking seems to be at the core of your work.
Yeah.
How, especially in the current climate, are you finding ways to encourage people to step away from the short-term pressures and focus on the long-term and making choices that may actually not benefit them in their that may not actually benefit them in their tenure? So it's really, I think it's something a lot of us are dealing with at the moment, actually.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's a lot in that. And I think it's very interesting working with academics. I mean, first of all, it's actually this chocolate, you know, heat, because unless you get money, then people will do something because they're fired up by the vision. And I think with great academics, they're drawn into this because they believe in the vision of making the world a better place, whether they do that through energy or through historicism or whatever it is. They're not motivated by money, but they need money to subsist. So unless there's a grant coming through or a means to develop that, then at a certain point they will go elsewhere. So there's a negotiation that goes on. So the term of these projects is probably 30 years. And there are things that they can deliver which will deliver that benefit over 30 years, and where there should be, if you gathered it all up and said, okay, what's the present value of what you can deliver through your work if we get it right, it would be very economical. But there isn't the funding and there isn't the mechanism in place at the moment, because the funding is short term. I'm being told that you know that so many things. I mean, not only me, actually, it's not about me, but if you go to a physicist in Oxford who's developing a new kind of AI institute, and they'll say, yeah, but I'm being told to deliver everything by the 31st of March. So you have, and then so you get the message about funding comes through in October. By the time Christmas has intervened, then it's January before you have the first meeting, and you have to deliver the final outcome by the 31st of March. Well, that's just madness. What can be done? These things turn very slowly. So I think we have got out of sync in our thinking, and we need to get back into the thinking of, if we want these benefits, then we need to be funding for 5 to 10 years. And yes, it is difficult keeping people involved, and I think that there's a constant bargaining that goes on, and actually for the big funders, I mean, the big funder is government, and government being able to encourage and leverage funding and use DIT and, you know, bring in sovereign wealth from other countries, but the mechanisms need to be in place. And I've been, you know, moved by some of the risk taking that's happened around COVID. I wish that we had more of that influencing our public sector investment and nurturing of great future ideas, wherever they are in the country, wherever they are on the spectrum. And I think there's a kind of, so that collapses, and it's like the way that people cut marketing in times of difficulty in a corporation. I think that we're doing that a little bit. So it is hard work. I think the thing that keeps people involved a little bit is that we're all in the same boat, but they are all very stretched because things have been cut to the bone.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And you mentioned some things there as well, which I think leads nicely to Penny's question. Thank you, Penny. So what opportunities are there now for greater diversity in your world of work?
Well, I mean, diversity, we don't have diversity. We have very, very little. And actually, it was something we've been trying to tackle, but it's systemic, and it'll take a whole generation or 2 generations to get the diversity that we need in science and technology. And you'll have seen, you know, that it's attracted more men than women, that we're all white, that there's very little diversity, and but things are changing. So I don't think we're doing very well on it at all, and it's something I'm aware of, and we need to nudge it along and have it in every conversation. I think there's something around this whole ARC project. I mean, if you look at the wealth differentials in the UK, the top 3 cities, the worst is Oxford, then London, then Cambridge. So the difference between wealth and poverty, and so there's a kind of, you know, that can't be right. What's happening here? But it's a whole systems thing. So I'm sorry, I don't really have an answer. We're just trying our best.
Thank you. Yeah, no, thank you for that. And I wanted to end on this one because I think it's a nice one to end on. We've got a few minutes left, but what advice would you give to other leaders?
Yeah, okay. Great. Well, I think there's some lessons about being a performer, that thinking about identifying in your kind of, it might be a board meeting or a presentation or a speech or a blog, but it could be a team meeting. What are your own performances, and getting ready for them, so practicing them, and you know, all the tricky parts to that, making sure that you've practiced it so often that actually you do have a flourish of achievement if you pull it off. I think the rule of 3, and I've mostly talked about 4 things today, so I've broken that rule. And the 3rd rule, by the way, or the 4th rule, is keep the rule of 3. I'm going to talk about 3 things. You know, when you get there are 7 things or 5 things or 10 things or 20 things, it's impossible to remember them, but we can all remember 3 things. So people are simple, busy, and their lives are crowded. And then the final thing was something, it was Roald Dahl, and I wanted just to read something out that I thought was really great. If you're interested in something, go for it, full speed, embrace it with both arms, hug it, love it, become passionate about it. Lukewarm is no good. White hot and passionate is the only way.
Wonderful. Oh, thank you. What a way to finish this. That's so great, Alistair. This has just been such an interesting conversation. And hearing about what you're doing is absolutely inspiring, and I think you should be absolutely proud of every day that you come together with everyone that you collaborate with. So thank you so much for sharing all of that with us so generously.
Thank you very much, Nadia. And I should have said I really admire the work that Clore are doing. It's fantastic, and it's kind of akin to this because it's distributed everywhere. And please, the moment of achievement will be if everyone signs up for our newsletter and comes to our next webinar, please.
Yes, thank you. Absolutely. Thank you everyone for joining us. And I think you'll all agree that it's been a really great chat with Alistair. We do now every month, so we will be in touch. We'll be in touch quite soon with the next one in January. And well, in the meantime, I hope everyone is well, keep safe and healthy, and can see as many of their loved ones as we're allowed to in this period. So happy holidays, everyone, and I hope you're all well, and we'll be in touch very soon. So thank you again, Alistair, and thank you everyone for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.